Dear friends, welcome to another episode of EKI video. Last week, we spoke about the Porter Five Forces model. Today, we talk about another model from Porter, the Porter Diamond model, which talks about how countries can become competitive. This model has got a story, a prologue, a history behind it, which takes us back to the 1970s and what the Americans consider as the loser decade. Why would they think so? The world had two oil shocks in the 1970s. The price of oil went up from $3 to a barrel to $30 to a barrel. The US real wages was falling and the standard of living of the average American was slipping. Labor productivity of US was still good, but other countries were quickly catching up, and hence there was a flight of manufacturing to Asian countries, which all resulted in a slipping in the top slot of world trade as far as US is concerned. The global hegemony and control was no longer there. And it was this United States that was inherited by a new president, Ronald Reagan, on a cold January morning of 1981. Not really a great inheritance. 2 years into his first presidential term in year 1983, Ronald Reagan summoned Harvard's then young 35-year-old professor Michael Porter to his Oval Office. And over a cup of tea, the president threw an apparently innocuous question to the professor. Sir, can you tell me what is the competitive advantage of the United States of America? Porter was probably a bit taken aback, and he tried to explain to the president that he has got a working model which talks about the competitive advantage of firms. The president waved his hand and told, "Well, dear Porter, I do know that you have a five forces model, but where is a new entrant here? Where is a substitute here? We are talking about countries, and I want to know the competitive advantage of your motherland." Porter went back, and in a couple of years came with a solid treatise called The Competitive Advantage of Nations and a business model, the Diamond Model, an answer to a presidential decree from Ronald Reagan. The basic premise of Porter's Diamond Model is that national prosperity is a created one and not an inherited one. Now, this thought, this philosophy clearly contradicts the thoughts of economists like Adam Smith, David Ricardo, and Karl Marx, who always believed that the natural endowments, the labor pool, the interest rates, the classic factor of land, labor, capital, and enterprise is what that drives prosperity. They are all inherited ones. Porter disputed it. Porter's explanation was that how would you justify countries like a Singapore, like a Taiwan, or a Japan in terms of their growth? Look at Singapore. It is 0.02% in terms of India in size, but approximately 12% in GDP. A Taiwan is about 1% the size of India, but one-fifth of Indian GDP. And Japan, as we all know, is about 10% the size of India, but double the GDP. How can you explain the national prosperity of these countries? Because they obviously do not have enough land or enough labor pool to inherit. So they would have got some other factors. Which brings us to the Diamond Model and the four determinants of national advantage. Let us start with the first one, factor conditions, which go above land, labor, and capital, the classic factors, and talk about a slew of cultivated capabilities, knowledge resources, scientific thrust, patency rights, innovation capabilities, cultural adaptability. Why even a time zone advantage suddenly becomes a factor. Let me try to explain Indian IT industry using this time zone advantage. When America goes to sleep, India wakes up, and when India goes to sleep, America wakes up. So the American companies get a seamless IT support and connectivity thanks to the 12-hour time zone difference between US and India, and that time zone advantage gives India a strategic competitive advantage in IT industry, which happens to be a completely new factor condition. A few more examples on this. Look at Singapore and its logistics capability. In the last 30-40 years, Singapore has built one of the best airports in the world, the Changi Airport, and one of the best seaports in the world. And in terms of logistics, a 720 square kilometer country is probably one of the most well connected ports, air and sea in the world. Take Italy and high end fashion. India, as I just now explained in the context of IT skills, these are some of the new emerging factors. We now move to demand. And when Porter talks about demand, he means the demand in the home base, the demand in the home country, both in terms of quantity and in terms of quality. It is a quantity of home demand that creates economies of scale, thereby bringing the cost down. And it is a quality of the home demand that creates that discerning, sophisticated buyer who will push the local companies to innovation, thereby they become very, very competitive and create a global platform for themselves. Take the case of Airbus versus Boeing. The first aircraft obviously was a Boeing, and they were flying between small American cities with not much of traffic between each of those points. The moment Europe got significant traffic, we were talking about traffic between European capitals, and suddenly the number of people flying per aircraft became very, very large. It is this requirement of catering to large number of passengers flying in a given hop that created a consortium of European countries to come up with the Airbus, which obviously is a much wide-bodied aircraft compared to the Boeing. Take Scandinavia and telecom. Scandinavia might not be known for too much in terms of production, in terms of manufacturing, but in terms of telecom, Nokia and Ericsson, two of the biggest names in the world, are Scandinavian companies. Why? The basic home necessity for maintaining a solid telecom network under adverse winter conditions. Germany and automobiles, one can keep on thinking of so many examples in this line. The third is rivalry, and the meaning of industry rivalry in the Porter Diamond model is exactly the same as its meaning in the Porter FIFO's model. The only difference is in FIFO's rivalry is a threat, but in Diamond it has got an opposite implication. The more there are rivals within a given country, in a given industry, it is better for the country. Take Akai, Brother, Canon, Casio, Hitachi, Mitsubishi, Nikon, Panasonic, Sony, all of them are sort of identical companies in the consumer electronic space, and because they're all present within the same country, their innovation capabilities ensure that they get global visibility and reach. The fourth, when a national advantage occurs for a downstream industry, then Porter advocates that in the upstream there has to be highly competent and highly capable suppliers who, by themselves being competent, capable, and having economies of scale, will create such robust components that because of their strength, their downstream company, the downstream industry will become globally competitive. So you need to have related supporting ancillary industries for a given industry to make that downstream industry globally competitive. Two simple examples. take computers and United States. Anything that you can think of around your computer, be it the chip from Intel, or be it the database from an Oracle, or be it the operating system from a Microsoft, any one of those ancillary support systems, they are all American companies. So obviously, the core downstream industry is going to be really, really strong. Take Chennai, which is often called the Detroit of India. Why are so many automobile companies setting up shop here? That is because the core auto ancillary capability of Chennai is really, really good. Many of them are Deming Award winners, and these companies are globally known for their auto parts. And it is the strength of these automobile ancillary companies that makes Chennai the Detroit of India. So these are the four determinants that drive the national advantage. To complete the model, Porter added two more variables and he called them chance and government. Now, chance is any event that is happening outside the scope of firms and maybe even outside the scope of governments, but that play a very, very crucial influencing role in determining competitive advantage. Take the case of a chance invention like, say, quartz being invented in Japan and then suddenly watchmaking moves from Europe to Japan, or a technological discontinuity like a nanotechnology that can be a complete game changer, or a change in input cost. We talked about oil price suddenly changing, which is a huge input cost shift in the 1970s, or a financial market crisis like the subprime crisis of United States in 2007-8. Any war can be thought of as a chance event. But today, as we are talking and you're listening, we are living through the biggest chance event of the last 100 years, and that happens to be COVID 19. A completely pure chance event that is going to significantly alter the global business dynamics of the entire world. Who is going to go up? Who is going to go down? We'll have to wait and see. Coming to the role of the government, Porter almost thought of government as the fifth determinant, but then later realized that government has a significant real role in influencing all the remaining four determinants. So Porter put government outside the diamond framework. Take import duties, take your trade barriers, take your free trade agreements, take your embargo of oil, which US recently sanctioned against Iran, take protectionist acts like Monopolies and Restrictive Trading Practices Act 1969 by the then Prime Minister Mrs. Indira Gandhi. Each of them has got its own way of trying to drive the competitive advantage of a country as driven by a governmental initiative. The latest which we can talk about is the current Prime Minister's Atmanirbhar Bharat, which, if it is going to succeed, is going to give a completely new dimension to the Make in India initiative for making India far more competitive in the manufacturing space. Friends, a quick comparison between the Porter FIFO's model and the Porter Diamond model. The first is a firm level model, talks about competitive advantage of firms within an industry. The second is a country level model, talks of competitive advantage of nations. In the first model, rivalry is a threat. In the second model, the meaning of rivalry is the same, but is a requisite for the country to become competitive. Generalizing, the entire list of Porter FIFOs are threats, and the entire determinants are wish lists. Suppose I had factors, suppose I had home demand, suppose I had that core intrinsic rivalry, suppose I had those ancillary supporting industries. So technically it's a wish list. This is a difference which is not so very obvious, so requires some time to understand. There is practically no interplay between the five forces of Porter, in the sense that each of them can act on you as an independent force, and The effect of new entrant might be quite different from the bargaining power of supplier, just for an example. But when we come to Porter's diamond model, we would understand shortly that there's a significant interplay between the four determinants of the diamond model, and it is because of this very high interplay that the country becomes really, really competitive. In the diamond model, a sort of complex game kicks off, and Porter calls it the self reinforcing interplay of advantages. What does he mean by that? He simply means that an absolute strength in any one of the four determinants is just not enough for you to become competitive unless you reinforce that strength using the other three vectors or other three determinants. It is this reinforcement which only a few industries can ensure within a given country that makes those few industries competitive at a national level. Or to put it in very, very simple terms, no country in the world can be a net exporter of everything. China is aspiring to do that, but let us wait and see. Now we come to an analogy which will make this self reinforcement amply evident. Let us try to understand mutual reinforcement using an example, an analogy. For those among you who understand and appreciate Hindi poetry, this is outstanding poetry. वो श्याम कुछ अजीब थी, ये श्याम भी अजीब है, is outstanding poetry. And obviously, the moment you have a poetry, you have a poet. Written by Gulzar, set to musical composition score by Hemant Kumar, sung in a completely soulful voice by Kishorda, and on the screen you have the black and white charisma of the one and only Rajesh Khanna, which is what an Amin Sayani would sum up in a Binaka Geetmala. If I'm permitted to try to bring Aminji's voice once again. बोल गुलजार की है, संगीत से सजा है हेमंत कुमार आवाज किशोर कुमार की, और पर्दे पे है वो जाने माने कलाकार जिन्हें दुनिया राजेश खन्ना के नाम से जानते हैं. ले लीजिए खामोशी की एक गीत, वो शाम कुछ अजीब थी. So a lot of poetry, a lot of music, singing, acting, cinematography, background score. So many things mutually reinforce each other to create that one great song. My dear friends, it's the same reinforcement that happens in the Porter diamond. Industries within a given country where factor, demand, rivalry, and supporting industries mutually reinforce each other within that country, those industries gain national recognition and global competitive advantage. With that, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Do not forget to like, to comment, and to subscribe to this channel. Thank you once again.